What we're offering today is stress management with Julius Rhodes. Julius Rhodes SPHR is a lifelong resident of Chicago's Southeast Side and president and founder of the NPR Group. His greatest accomplishment is his marriage to his wife, Linda, and their two children, Jerome and Lauren, and we'll get a chance to meet them virtually through this session today. But he's also the author of Brand You, Personal Branding for Success in Life and Business, and Brand You, the Workbook. And in 1994, he began the NPR Group, a broad-based human resources consulting firm providing customized training, consulting, and project management services. For more information on the NPR Group, please visit www.nprgroup.info. And we will be taking questions at different times throughout the program today, so please use the chat feature to do so. Everyone is muted, so don't worry about that. We also can't see your screens. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Julius Rhodes.
Jordan, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to lead our session on dealing with well-being and stress during times of uncertainty. As Jordan mentioned, my name is Julius Rhodes, and I am the founder and principal of the NPR Group based here in Chicago, Illinois. Certainly, during this unprecedented time, all of us are experiencing different emotions, different feelings, and this session is designed to provide you with some tactics, some strategies to enhance your well-being, as well as help you manage positively some of the stress that you may be feeling at this point in time. From an agenda standpoint, we're going to talk about defining well-being and stress, understanding what we can do to address these issues, as well as a couple of experiential exercises looking at the dimensions of wellness and looking at stress, along with some tactics again and strategies that you can use to address well-being and stress. I'd like to emphasize throughout the course of the presentation, if you do have questions, please feel free to use the chat feature to ask those, and I'll ask Jordan as he receives those to share them, and I'll certainly try to get to them as I can. And we want to leave some time at the end of the presentation for any additional questions that may come up. Now, before I begin, I want to share just a little bit about myself. The name of my company is the NPR Group, and it stands for the most important part of my life. It's named after my mom and dad, Marzette and Pete Rhodes, and here you see a photo of them in 1955. They were married in 1951, and in April of 2019, they celebrated 68 years of marriage. Here's a more recent photo of them at their 61st wedding anniversary in 2012. And then another photo celebrating Father's Day with my father, my mother, and Pete, my eldest sibling, in 2016. My father was recently deceased in August of 2019, but he left me with a treasure trove of memories, and I named my business the NPR Group as a way to honor all the hard work and effort that my mom and dad have put into me, because it lets me know that I have to do the same thing for my family. With that, let me share a little bit of my family with you. On April 14th, I will have been married to my wife, Linda, for 30 years this year. And we've been blessed to have two wonderful children, Jerome and Lauren. I'll talk a little bit about my son. He was a two-time All-American at the Milwaukee School of Engineering. He now lives in Portland, Oregon, and works for Adidas as a marketing analyst. And a little bit about my daughter. She's a 2018 graduate of Millikan University with a degree in Spanish, and she serves as a residential counselor at Moose Harbor School in Batavia, Illinois. So with that, thank you for allowing me to share a little bit of my family with you. I never start any presentation I do without talking about them, because as Mother Teresa said, love begins by taking care of the ones closest to you, and those are the ones at home. So I always want to recognize my family, and I want to recognize the shoulders of the giants, Marzette and Pete Rhodes, that I stand on for all of their hard work. As a way of getting calibrated around our topic of wellness and stress management, I want to give you a quick calibration quote. That quote comes from Albert Einstein, who said, "The world as we have created is a process of our thinking. It cannot be changed without changing our thinking." And when you think about the unprecedented nature of the time that we're in at this point, I like to say, for every sunset, there's a sunrise. We are certainly in a period of unprecedented change, life-impacting change, but this too shall pass. So for every sunset, there's a sunrise. For every sunrise, there's a sunset, and we'll make it through. Well-being and stress. These are two terms that I've included in this presentation, but it makes sense for us to take a brief moment to think about what do those terms mean and to provide a definition for them. So using your chat box just for about 30 seconds, pick one of those two terms, well-being or stress. And then what I'd like you to do is just type out a couple of quick words or thoughts that come to mind when you think about well-being, or a sentence, if you like, when you think about either well-being or stress. And I'll give you a couple of seconds to do that. So I see we have a couple things coming in. I saw the word balance, and balance is certainly an important concept, not just when it comes to well-being and stress, but in our lives. Anxiety inducing, a couple other things. Well-being and stress are probably directly related in some way, and we'll certainly talk about that. Stress, physical symptoms in GI and skin, and those are certainly manifestations of stress, and we'll talk about the two types of stress that we can encounter. Ambiguity about the future, lack of control, and certainly during this point in time, there's a lot of ambiguity out there. I see the word tension as indicative of stress, and then I see a couple other things: good health and fitness, self-care, meditation, self-acknowledgement, well-being, and a number of other things. So what I'd like to try on and have you try on is this idea for well-being and for stress. When we talk about well-being, the key point that I want to emphasize here is an experience. And it includes having good mental health, which is something that a couple of you identified in the words that you use to identify well-being. It also includes a sense of meaning or purpose and the ability to manage stress, which gets back to that idea that stress and well-being are somehow connected. When we think about stress, it's a state of mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from adverse or very demanding circumstances. Now, that's typically the definition that we associate with stress. It's the negative definition of stress, which we call distress. But there's also a positive connotation associated with stress, which is known as eustress. And we're going to talk about those two things in just a little bit. Now, what you see on your screen now is the wheel of wellness. And there are 8 different dimensions to the wheel of wellness that you see there. Everything from environmental, occupational, physical, financial, recreational, social, mental, and spiritual. When I talk about spiritual, I'm talking about a belief system, not necessarily religious values, but a belief in what is going on around you. And if you want to, you can certainly include that spiritual dimension to mean your faith from a religious perspective. When you look at the wheel of wellness, it can be scored, each area, each of those 8 dimensions can be scored on a scale from 1, which is low, to 10 being high. And what I'd like you to do is just take a moment and to look at those dimensions and then begin to rate yourself. Where do you fall in each of those 8 dimensions? And you can just write a number down for each of those 8 dimensions. So take a moment and go ahead and write down where you see yourself in each of those 8 dimensions on the wheel of wellness. And I'd like to say when we do this, it's very important that we do something that's oftentimes very difficult for people to do, and that's to be truthful with yourself, to take a critical look and assessment of where you are today. And certainly, again, unprecedented times, and maybe each of us are experiencing a little lesser of a degree of wellness than we might have been, say, at the beginning of the year. But where are you at today with regard to this wellness wheel? And go ahead and give yourself a score of 1 to 10 on each of those dimensions. And I'll give you a little bit of time to do that. So when you look at those various dimensions, you'll have different scores. The ideal is to try to have as much of a concentric circle as you can, realizing that there are going to be high points and low points. And thanks for sharing. I see a couple of people have shared their scores with me, and I appreciate that. When you think about it, what I'd like to have you do in order to make this exercise more meaningful, so I want you to do two things with it. One, as you look at the numbers that you come up with, it provides you with a roadmap, or should provide you with a roadmap for you to say, for those areas that are low, what's one thing I can do right now, a small change that I can make that might give me the opportunity to experience greater gains down the road. And for those things that are high, what are the things I need to do in order to keep those things high, so that I don't suffer a decline in one area or another because I was working on an area that was low. The second thing I want you to do, and this is vitally important, when you rate yourself, this is your perception of where you see yourself at. And what I'd like for you to do is to begin to, it seems like we have someone who isn't muted, so if we can have someone who isn't muted, you can check to make sure you're muted, that would be appreciated for the rest of the attendees. So the second thing I'd like to have you do with the Wheel of Wellness, after you've scored yourself, is to develop a plan. That's part one. Part two is to share it with someone, because most of us give ourselves the benefit of the doubt. We'll rate ourselves higher because we believe in the things that we believe in and we believe in ourselves. But to the extent you share it with others, it gives you a chance to get critical feedback that will allow you to begin to incorporate other points of view and may even give you an opportunity to look at things a little bit differently. When we talk about feedback, it's vitally important. It's something that I talk about with regard to wellness and stress management that you all should know, is that in your roles, in your responsibilities, the higher up you go, the further you are removed from feedback. So the ideal is wherever you have an opportunity to ask and encourage feedback, because typically you won't receive that from the people who are around you the higher up you go. Now, let's move on and take a look at the two types of stress. When we think about stress, most often it's a negative situation, it's distress. An example of distress would be things that we most commonly associate with stress, such as financial issues, or now even COVID-19. But where we want to go and where we want to get to is moving away from thinking of stress in a negative and identifying eustress, that beneficial stress, either psychological, your mental well-being, or physical activities such as exercise. An example of eustress would be a challenging work environment that is perceived to be neither too difficult nor too easy, but it requires you to stretch in order to meet your goal, or a strength training workout. So let's take a look at some essential well-being tactics. Number one, I talk about continuing to maintain a strong sense of personal responsibility and accountability. All of us are experiencing something we've never experienced before. And it's important for us to maintain that sense of personal responsibility and accountability And as I like to say, you're 100% accountable and responsible for you. And you're at least 50% accountable and responsible for any interaction you have with other individuals. The second thing is to have a realistic and positive outlook. When you look back on the history of our country, we faced difficult times in numerous situations. Tough times will always be there. It's how we adjust to those tough times. The world isn't about you, never has been. Rather, it's about how you adjust to the things that you're confronted with. And having a realistic yet positive outlook provides you with the best opportunity to increase your level of well-being. And then the final thing, and I think this is particularly important as we go through our current situation, is to take time to identify new experiences in life and new discoveries. And I'll give you a quick example. Even though we are in a situation where we can move around as much as we want, we still have the opportunity to get out. And I was walking in my neighborhood park that I grew up in, not far from my parents' house, and there's a lagoon. And I always wondered, where does the water come from? We're not really close to the lake or any tributaries of the lake. So where does this body of water come from? As I walked around the lagoon, being alert to social distancing and other things that we're talking about, I stumbled across the source of a lagoon. It was a waterfall that had been constructed by the park district, I don't know how many years ago, but certainly many, many years ago, as that lagoon has been around since I was a child. And that was a new discovery for me. And as I got to that place where the lagoon started, there was a plaque that talked about the origins of the lagoon and how and why it got started. That was a new discovery for me. So take the time to identify new experiences, to identify new things that you probably have wanted to do, but maybe have not had the chance to do because of time and technology and other constraints that curtail our ability to do new things in new ways. And give yourself the opportunity to identify new experiences in life and new discoveries. So how do we stay safe under stress? And we talked about distress, and we talked about the ideal to create positive stress or eustress. So I want to give you this safe model of how to engage with stress. First, stop. When you feel a negative situation, or even you feel a positive situation, take a moment to think about what's going on. And I want you to focus on mindful breathing. On Wednesday, for those of you who may attend it, we had a session led by Shante Haygrove, I believe, on meditation and mindful breathing. She gave you a very simple technique. I have a very simple technique as well. I like to talk about the connection between our heart and our breathing. So what I like to do when I'm focusing on mindful breathing is to take my right hand, place it over my heart, take my left hand, place it on my stomach, close my eyes, sit back nice and high, spine elongated, and just focus on breathing. Feeling the beat of my heart under my hand and my diaphragm as it expands and contracts. It gives me a chance to refocus and recenter. The A, I want to affirm what's going on. And I want to focus on the positives and what are the things that I can control in that only moment that I have control over, which is now. The third thing I want to do is I want to ask myself, what small changes can I make that will yield long-term gains? And as you think about change, think about it from the perspective of you can't do all things all the time. You can't be everything to everyone. But if you can pick out one thing that you want to begin to incorporate into your daily and weekly routines so it becomes a habit over time, then you can begin to go back and pick up other things and add those small changes. Don't ever try to do everything at once. It's a recipe for disaster. The next thing I want you to do is to focus. to identify the small change, to identify the positives, to focus on that mental breathing, and realize that at certain points in time, you need to narrow your focus so that you can effectively find a course of action that will lead you to achieve those goals that you've set for yourself. And then finally, the E is to engage, to begin the process of executing the strategy that you've developed that will allow you to be safe under stress. I want to move now to an area that I talk a lot about, and it's mental clutter. A lot of us have so much going on. I know as an entrepreneur, my brain is constantly in motion. It's sometimes very difficult for me to disconnect from my mental psyche and to do things that will allow me to just take a break. So I want to give you a couple of things you can do that will allow you to clear your head. The first is to let go of small things, remembering that there aren't very many things in life that are so monumental that if you don't correctly identify them, everything else will go away. There's that old saying, let go of the small things, and they're all small things. So keep that in mind. Secondly, notice the 4 S's: sight, sounds, smells, and sensations. As you go about your day, what are things that you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? And what are the sensations that are elicited when you see, hear, and smell those things? What are those things that give you pleasure, that give you pause, and create an opportunity for you to reflect, renew, and recharge? Next, make sure that you take in each sensation and identify what makes it pleasurable. Allow yourself to get lost in that sensation, that sight, that sound, that smell, and to really revel in it. The next thing I talk about is pay positive attention to the simple things. Very few people that I know want a package that's all wrapped up with a big bow on it. I mean, we'll all take that, but the reality is we also want to know what were the little things that went into that package that created that moment. So pay positive attention to simple things, to small things, because small things become big things. And as I like to say, all fires start small. The sooner we get to them, the quicker we can put them out. So allow yourself to pay attention to the simple things, the small things, because over time, they become big things. Next, again, identify small changes you can make, because small changes made over time result in big gains. And then finally, savor the only moment you have control over, which is now. It's natural at this point in time to think about what the future holds. But in thinking about what the future holds, you're missing an opportunity to take advantage of today. And today is the only thing that you really know. Yesterday is history, tomorrow's a mystery. Take advantage of today, the present, the gift that you've been given, and make each day your masterpiece. So, what are things you can do to increase your well-being and eustress? First of all, have fun. Life should be lived. Take time to relax, enjoy yourself, and even though we're in this period of what some people call social distancing, I like to call proximity distancing, because we're social creatures by nature. We need and crave interaction. Being available on this webinar presentation is a way of interacting socially with someone. So I talk about proximity distancing, that 6 feet gap that we've been hearing about. But we are social creatures, and we never give up that opportunity to engage with people. Secondly, put yourself in a positive environment. Good people, role models, socialize. Take the time to do some things that you wouldn't normally do. My daughter, for my birthday, recently bought me 2 wonderful books. Given the hectic nature of my business and my day, I don't have a lot of time to read. but I found myself sitting in my rocking chair. Yes, I'm old. I do have a rocking chair, looking out my back window and reading one of the wonderful books that she's provided me. It's put me in a positive mode. It has enhanced my ability to take in the things around me, and it's just a good way for me to deconnect and de-stress. Third, be an informed consumer and not just a receiver of information. There's a lot of stuff out there around everything you can think of. If you were to Google COVID-19, if you were to Google stress, if you were to Google any topic that you can think of, within seconds, you'll have thousands, hundreds of thousands of responses. But the thing I encourage you to do is to live your life based on facts and not fiction or fear. Because fear is fantasy experienced as reality. And we can't live our lives based upon fear. We have to live it based upon facts. So be an informed consumer. And at the end of this presentation, I'm going to give you a couple of resources that you can use, both in terms of better understanding and learning more about well-being and eustress, but also resources that you can look at to give you more factual information on this pandemic that we're facing. And then finally, practice proximity distancing, not social distancing, as I mentioned, because we are by nature social creatures. With that, here are a few resources that you can take advantage of around well-being. This first TED Talk link is about 10 different TED Talk videos around well-being and mental health, given by a wide range of individuals. Some you know well, some you don't, but I'm quite sure that once you go there, each one of them will present something to you that resonates with you around the topic of well-being and stress. Greater Good magazine out of Cal Berkeley is another great resource. And then finally, another resource called Be You, which I believe comes from Arizona University. As it relates to COVID-19 resources, I listed at the very top the crisis text line as for Common Thread team members, but that's a national hotline that you can check out. There's a toll-free number associated with it. Ogletree Dinkins is an employment law firm here in Chicago, Illinois, that does a great job. And they put on a number of very well done webinars on COVID-19 and resources. And of course, you have your U.S. Department of Labor, the Center for Disease Control, and the World Health Organization. So take advantage of all of those opportunities to increase your factual knowledge around COVID-19. Take advantage of the well-being resources that I share with you. And then the final thing I'm going to give you is just my information, a chance for you to ask any questions. As you look at my information, if there are any things that come up relative to this presentation, any questions or concerns, feel free to give me a call either on my office line or my cell phone line. You can also reach out to me via email at jrhodes@mprgroup.info. You can follow me on Twitter as well. And I would like to ask one favor of each of you who are in attendance, if you could, at the end of the presentation, if you could go to my website at www.mprgroup.info and leave a brief comment in my guest book as to what you felt about the presentation. I'd appreciate it. I see that we may have a question coming up from someone. Jordan, you see any questions out there?
Not just yet, but folks, if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the chat.
You know, as you think about the things I've mentioned, the final, kind of a quote I want to give you is, we talked about taking care of those closest to you. And the final quote I want to give you is, where your treasure is, there too will also be your heart. We need to understand that in this difficult time, we should learn to value the connections we can make with people. And if there's one thing I hope that comes out of this situation, is that we realize no matter how much technology contributes. At the end of the day, it's about how can you connect with people as people and to begin to treat people as if they matter, because the reality is they do. There is a question, will you give access to a copy of the presentation? And that answer is yes. It will be posted on the Facebook page to Common Threads, and I believe you can also identify that from their website, which is www.commonthreads.org. Is that correct, Jason? Jordan?
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
So www.commonthreads.org is the website, and they will be posting this presentation on their Facebook page as well. How do you help a family member, question came up, how do you help a family member that does not want to talk? I always say when it comes to communication, in order to effectively communicate with someone, they have to be willing to communicate back. If they don't want to talk, the best opportunity you can give them is to let them know that you're a resource, that you're ready to talk to them, you're ready to hear, listen to them. And many times when people won't talk, what they really want is someone who's going to listen. So make yourself close without being intrusive, but also check in periodically so they know that you're sincere in your offer to help support them. And then when they are ready to talk, the bigger part of your role will be listening and giving them a chance to identify the answers that are going to be most beneficial to them, as opposed to offering them an answer. If they ask, offer. If not, listen, and then respond, do you want me to share with you how I might address it, as opposed to just volunteering it. Another question is that wellness tool a well-known tool? It is. It's in the public domain. If you were to just Google wellness wheel, you'll see that there are just tons of them out there, each one a little bit different. For my way of doing things, the simpler you can make something, the better. The best leaders are individuals who are able to simplify. And so this is a very simple wheel. It talks about the 8 dimensions. It gives you a couple of examples of what might fit into those 8 dimensions. And it's a 1 to 10 scale. But you can find some that have much more elaborate definitions of the 8 dimensions. Some people narrow it down to 6. Some people narrow it down to 5. I like the 8 dimensions of wellness on the wheel I've given you, but it is a very common tool. And I agree with you. It is a very engaging, excellent, enlightening tool. And again, it's very simple. Again, the key to the wheel of wellness is, one, being totally honest with yourself where you're at now, using those answers that you scored yourself on as a tool to help increase those areas where you're lower than you want to be, while also creating a plan to maintain those areas that you're high in, and then also being able to share that information with other people so they can give you critical feedback that will also help you dial in a plan to help you increase your level of well-being. Are there any other questions? If not, I want to thank you all for coming out this afternoon. I hope that in some way this presentation has been able to provide you with at least one tool that you can use to address some of your concerns. I see we might have one other question. Nope, no other questions. Jordan, I'm going to turn it back over to you, and I'm going to say again, thank you all. Continue to take care of yourself and your loved ones during this unprecedented time. And I hope to hear from you either in my guest book or reaching out to me via my email address, my office phone, or my cell phone.
Great. Thank you so much, Julius. Thank you to everyone who participated today. I will tell you, as someone who's known Julius now for about a year, worked with him closely on a few other projects, he means it and he does get back to you. So as you have questions afterwards, please do send him a note or give him a call. This is really a great time for us to lean on people like Julius as we're all trying to navigate the new normal of COVID-19. We will be in touch with additional opportunities for wellness sessions as we kick off this week, and we appreciate everyone for participating. Thank you again, Julius.
Jordan, you're welcome. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone, a great weekend, and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.